It was the summer of 1969. President Nixon has begun to withdraw troops out of Vietnam. Neil Armstrong becomes the first man to walk on the moon as part of the Apollo 11 landing. And the week before Woodstock brought 400,000 free-loving hippies to a farm in upstate New York and changed the course of rock and roll and music festivals forever, Charles Manson convinces 4 members of his new family to brutally kill 5 people in the Topanga Canyon home of director Roman Polanski, including his 8.5-month pregnant wife, rising star Sharon Tate. The next night, the Manson family will strike again, killing another couple in nearby Los Feliz. By December 8, 1969, Charles Manson will be charged with first-degree murder and 7 killings, even though no one died at his hand. How did a career criminal, fresh out of prison, without even a high school education, convince numerous young middle-class women with no prior criminal records to not only abandon their lives and follow him up and down the California coast, but to also brutally stab strangers to death at his command? Where does a person like that come from? What type of childhood creates such a unique and terrible force of nature? What kind of dude gets people to murder, people to start a race war in his insane and hilarious Helter Skelter vision? Find out all this and more in what has been my personal favorite Timesuck so far.
You're listening to Timesuck.
Wow, I got a big one for everybody today. Spent a lot of time on this baby and happy to do so. I feel like I'm kind of starting to figure this podcast out. You know, I got to get a jump on the research so I don't feel rushed to throw out a half-ready episode come Monday. I'm trying to get a fair amount of these kind of in the can so I can take my time with ones as needed. And I did need a jump on this one, and I'm glad I got it. I lost a couple days out on the road, holed up in a hotel, listening to Manson music, watching Manson interviews, Manson documentaries, reading a lot of articles about this diminutive little psychopath. And before I get into it, welcome to the show. And a little house cleaning. I want to comment real quick on last week's episode and kind of the week before. I want to apologize for not putting the time I needed to make those episodes what I feel like they could have been. And I got a lot of positive comments from you guys, and I feel very appreciative, but I just don't feel like they were as entertaining as they needed to be. I felt like I meandered a lot. I felt like, and I knew it going in. I was like, whatever. I'll have a lot of interesting facts to share. Who cares that I don't have my brain around what the narrative of this episode is supposed to be? And that's bullshit. You guys take your time to listen to this, and I want it to be worth it. I want it to be, something that's not just like a podcast you like, but your favorite podcast. I want to put something out there in the world that is just meaningful. I mean, that's, it's kind of the driving artistic goal of my life is to do shit that's going to stand up to a little test of time and that people can be, proud of or weird way that they're a part of. I know it sounds crazy. But yeah. And I just, I didn't feel like the last couple did that. I'm still getting a handle on just trying to figure out, how to make this podcast as good as it can be. I'm so glad that you guys have been so nice on iTunes and everywhere else. And I don't feel like we've reached near the potential of what this thing can be. Because I want it to be really informative. I want it to be really funny. And I just want it to be really, really honest. Because there's so much bullshit in the world. So much bullshit. And it's like, we bullshit each other in friendships. We bullshit each other in relationships, at work. And I just want this to be a place where you can come and you can hear one person's 100,000% unfiltered, I can't fucking talk, I'm an idiot. I'm trying to say something important, and I fuck it up. Unfiltered perspective on something, And I did that, as best I could the last few weeks, but it was without the proper preparation. And I did get, one email so far. It just came out as I'm recording this, the Walmart episode. But, with some constructive criticism, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to read a quick little email from part of it, an excerpt from Charlie McKaylee, Utah. And just before, if you're listening, Charlie, which I think you are, no, this is nice. I am not upset at all. And you sent me some really nice emails. And one was, I really do love your comedy and your podcast. With the last podcast, you said how Walmart needs to raise its pay. I see your side. I respectfully disagree with your premise that the minimum wage should be raised. You should do some research on what that would do to smaller companies like mine, instead of only talking about larger companies. Maybe do a podcast on how this country's politicians have shit on small businesses for decades now. I pay 37% in business tax. Wow. Dude, that's crazy. 37% in business tax, 20% in materials, and roughly 3% on miscellaneous. Raising the minimum wage would destroy small businesses. I know this is coming off like I'm saying fuck you. I swear I'm not. I'm not some pussy that can't listen to someone I can disagree with. I love that. It would take me a lot to stop listening to your podcast or comedy. And then and then Charlie followed up with an apology email, which he didn't need to do. You didn't need to do that, Charlie, but it titled, I'm a douche, which made me laugh really hard. But you're not a douche at all, Charlie. I love it when you guys disagree with me so much because I learn as much from your guys' suggestions as, you may learn from these podcasts. I love that it's reciprocal, and I love constructive criticism. I love it so much, because I just, another kind of goal in my life is to improve. I want to always improve my comedy and make it hopefully smarter and funnier, and I want to improve this podcast, each and every week if possible. And this is the kind of shit that does it. You're right, man. You are 100% right. I did not research that, and I should have. And that's what I was referring to earlier. And I knew that before this email came in. It was a huge fucking topic that I didn't have my brain around, and I should have sat on it for a few months. And I should have went on to other topics and came back to it and added to it until it was totally ready, like today's topic is, by the way. Very excited. And so I apologize to you. And and just for the record, what I was trying to do with the Walmart thing is not point out that small businesses are bad. I'm really not, and I don't know. The main thrust of what I was trying to get out there is that a corporation that has billions and billions and billions in profits each and every year should kick some back to the people making that company great. The bottom tier of employees. I just hate how, man, if history shows us one thing, it's that the poor and the voiceless get motherfucked every goddamn generation. And just, insanely greedy, wealthy people who just pat themselves on the back like they deserve it all. Fuck you. That is enemy number one of the world. That's the exploiter, the one holding the little man down. So that's what I was just trying to get at. So I'm with you. I'm with you, Charlie, and I appreciate that. And you are absolutely not a douche. You are awesome. Thank you for paying so much attention. And today, let's get into this shit. Today's Timesuck was requested by two separate Timesuckers. We got Jeff Patyk. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Patyk. He had asked for a Manson episode. He emailed me an admin at timesuckpodcast.com. Appreciate all the emails there. And Horton Alfredo hit me up on Twitter January 3rd, pointing out that Manson's in the hospital. Some kind of serious medical condition. Turns out very vague. I couldn't find any info as to what exact type of medical condition he's suffering from at this point of the recording. The prison won't release it. And this is actually the first topic my wife suggested I research earlier, which explains why I'm with her. She loves crazy shit. So thanks everyone for pushing me on this episode. Didn't realize how little I knew about Charles Manson until I dug in. I had always thought of Charles Manson as just almost like a weird quasi-celebrity, like this pop culture reference where it's Marilyn Manson, that band, which I like a lot of their songs, took part of their name from Charles Manson. He's like this symbol of just, cartoonish evil. Or a fuck you to the system. He just looks like an insane homeless guy with a swastika carved into his forehead. And whenever I'd seen interviews, I didn't really listen to what he was saying. I just was amused by his kind of psychobabble. He talks in this crazy prison slang and this weird beatniky, like an evil beatniky kind of vibe when you watch interviews of the dude talk. And I just thought he was a fucking nut. And I knew he had to do with murders, in the 60s or 70s. I didn't know the exact. I knew the name Sharon Tate. I knew Roman Polanski, who I could do a whole episode on that fucking pedophile. If you don't know about that, Roman Polanski, shortly after all this has been hiding out of the country, still making movies, even though he sodomized a 13-year-old motherfucker. But he's an artist. He's an artist. So you know what? If the gas station attendant does that, he's the scourge of the earth. But if he's Roman Polanski, he can still be, heralded by the prestigious actors and actresses, of the day, and the Academy Awards. You know what? You get to put your wiener, I guess, in a 13-year-old's butt if you're a good enough director. That's what we learned from Roman Polanski. Fuck that guy, and fuck his movies. But anyway, I'm not gonna get distracted old Polanski. But anyway, that's why I thought about Manson. Didn't know much. And oh my God, I had so much fun in a dark, morbid way researching this guy because what a fascinating life. And what a crazy, very dark, but crazy amount of life he crammed into what very little time he didn't spend in prison. I did not know about his past before the summer of '69 and the Manson family murders. So to get a feel for Manson, we got to go back to the beginning. We got to get to know this guy from birth, so you can see what conditions a fucking very unique monster, very different than like a Bundy or a Gacy, a serial killer. He is a unique animal, about as unique as they come. So this is the first of two in this episode, Timesuck Timelines.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a Timesuck timeline.
November 12th, 1934. Charles Manson is born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Oh, Cincinnati! Giving us Manson. Well played. To single mother, 16-year-old Kathleen Maddox. His father, was like a brief fling Kathleen had, who left the picture long before Charlie was ever born. I don't know, I'm fucking calling him Charlie now. Like we're old pals. But yeah, anyway, he was a dude named Colonel Scott. I guess his first name was Colonel. That's kind of weird. Colonel Scott. Sounds so much like Colonel Sanders. I just picture this lady fucking Colonel Sanders and a baby coming out with a swastika on her forehead. But anyway, Colonel Scott, Ashland, Kentucky. This guy would die by 1954, never acknowledging his son. And around the time of the birth of Charles Manson, Kathleen briefly married William Manson. That's how he got his last name. So then, 1939 to 1944, Kathleen and her brother serve a 5-year prison sentence for the armed robbery of a West Virginia gas station. And this is such a hillbilly crime. They didn't even. I think they were armed with a bottle. It was like technically considered a weapon. Like they pretended like they had a gun. It was like the equivalent of like the finger in your pocket. Like stick them up, and it turns out you got just your hand in there. Like it was just such a backwoods fucking hillbilly West Virginia crime. But they go to prison for 5 years. And little Charlie, he goes to live a few miles from the prison with some relatives, his Aunt Jenna, Uncle Bill, good old Uncle Bill, cousin Joanne, a lot of early, mid-20th century, Joanne, I don't know. I was going to say West Virginia names, whatever. But they did seem like some solid West Virginia backwoods fucking hill folk. Uncle Bill supposedly sent little Charlie, who was always small for his age, to his first day of school. So think about this kid. His first day of school, he's the tiniest kid in class. He's a very small little guy. Sent him to school dressed up as a girl. So he's going to school dressed up as a girl. His mom's in prison. His dad is nowhere in sight. And he did this, sent him to prison or sent him to school like this because he thought he was a sissy. And he wanted to toughen him up. It's like the old Johnny Cash, boy called Sue kind of technique, I guess. Well, not surprisingly, Charlie come home crying about how a kid is hitting him. Well, the same uncle that dressed him up like a girl apparently slapped Charlie across the fucking ear so hard he couldn't hear for several days, told him to find that bully who was picking on him when he went back to school the next day, and do not come home until that kid's either bleeding or on the ground. That's a quote, bleeding or on the ground. Oh, man. Not the best situation for a boy, between the ages of 5 and 10. Again, no dad, mom's in prison. Got psychotic hillbillies. Telling you how the world's supposed to work. You're getting your ass beat at school. You're the tiniest kid in class. So that's where we start. That's where we start with Charles. 1944 to 47, Manson is back and forth between living with his mom, being abandoned by his mom, living on his own, being abandoned by his mom again, juvenile detention centers. Even by teen mom standards, by all accounts, Kathleen was a terrible mother. There's all kinds of stories about how she may have been an on-again, off-again prostitute, stories like she would, send him to the neighbors for an hour when her John would come over, and she'd leave Charlie with the family, take off to live with some new man, just completely abandon him, go to a, neighboring state like Indiana or somewhere, and then when that relationship inevitably didn't work out, because she was a fucking train wreck of a person, she'd come back, take Charlie back, abandon him again. Stories about working stuff as a dive bar as a bartender while Charlie watched himself in the apartment above the bar. Undoubtedly bringing dudes home here and there after shifts. Again, been in prison, for armed robbery already. So let's just say she had a very relaxed moral code, very relaxed maternal instincts, i.e. none. Yeah, this is the worst one from that era. According to Manson, at one point she sold Charles to a waitress she worked with for a pitcher of beer. Stayed with the waitress, who I imagine just felt sorry for the kid, for a few days until an uncle came and picked him up. So there again, mom gets out of prison. Now you're this little kid, 10, 11, 12. You're getting traded for fucking beer pitchers. That's going to build up a little hatred towards women, I would say. In 1947, Kathleen tried to place 13-year-old Charlie in foster care. Wanted to just give him to... That is so fucked at 13. I mean, oh my God. Like, I get it. I'm really trying not to be judgmental, where it's like, let's say you're a teen mom and you got a baby. It's like, man, and you think, okay, they're going to have a better life. And then, a foster family raises them. I get that. I really, really, truly do. But when the kid is 13, figure it the fuck out, you monster. Oh, man, you're forming your identity? And your mom's like, get out of here, shithead. Well, she couldn't get to court to place him in foster care. It's probably because he's too old, And he goes to the Jabal School for Boys in Terre Haute. 10 months later, he runs away to find his mom, does find her, and now she rejects him for the rest of his childhood. And again, he's 13, and oh my God, the more I would read about her, Kathleen, the more I want, her to be in. Well, she's dead now, but I wanted her to be in prison, after the summer of '69 for the rest of her life as well too, because she made this dude, and and the dad who abandoned it. To be fair to her, he's equally responsible for just not fucking being there at all. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand. I would kill for my kids. I've not been the best human being, in certain ways. I've made mistakes like everybody else, but man, the kids, I just can't imagine abandoning them. So anyway, may your body rest in anguish there, Kathleen. So let's go later to 1947. Oh, and by the way, Kathleen it's not like her backstory was terrible. She was raised in a, uptight religious household, as was most of the fucking world at that time. But no stories ever of like abuse or anything with her. She just seemed like a piece of shit. Later, 1947, 13-year-old Manson commits a string of burglaries. The crimes begin, uses the money to rent himself a room. Again, at 13, my son's just turning 11. I can't imagine living on your own. He's quickly caught, sent to an Indianapolis juvenile detention center, escapes after just one day, quickly recaptured, commits more burglaries, and then back and forth he goes. Now, this begins the long period of like criminal incarceration of his life. And he's already been, just bounced around and staying in different places. 1949, 15-year-old Manson is sent to Father Flanagan's Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska, where incredibly he was not molested. I think that's miraculous, considering he spent time in a center with the words father, boys, and town all in the title. That sounds like the Mustang Ranch for pedophiles, for pederasts, which I randomly learned doing some other research. That's a pedophile who only likes boys, I guess. A pederast. But unbelievably, he was not molested there. I mean, it truly sounds like a South Park kind of, like a name they would give to a place where like every kid gets fingered, like Father Flanagan's Boys Town. It sounds like Father Fingerbanger's Boys Town. It sounds horrible. 1949, 4 days after being placed in Boys Town, Manson escapes, goes back to burglaries, commits his first armed robberies, and ends up in the Indiana Boys School, where he would later claim he was beaten and raped. How much does that suck? You escape from Father Flanagan's Boys Town, where you're not raped, only to end up in Indiana Boys School, where you are. I mean, the kid didn't have a chance. Again, not saying anything he did later was justified, but my God. Yeah, I can't imagine that kind of childhood. 1951, Manson has escaped from the Indiana Boys, but I don't know why I'm laughing at my own stuff. He escaped from the Indiana Boys butt rape palace. I actually wrote that on my notes. I'm an idiot. And heads towards California in a stolen car, robbing gas stations along the way. And it's caught in Utah and then sent to the Washington, D.C. National Training School for Boys. A lot of places for boys. He's just sent to one boys' place after another. What? Not the smartest criminal. It's like, let's steal a car, and then let's just, in order to pay for the gas in the way, let's just rob every gas station we encounter. No one will ever trace our path that way. And our stolen car with the stolen light, with the license plate, the idea is, and just like creating witnesses at every place we stop of more crimes. So it's hard to say if he was just really, really bad at committing crimes at this point, or if he just like robbed so many fucking places that even though maybe his batting average was high for pulling off, heists and such, he still got caught all the time. Just the volume of crimes he was committing. And then he bounces around, getting transferred from one penal institution to another, bouncing around the country, finally gets out. 1954, at the age of 20, what does he do? Finds Mama. Yeah, sweet Mama Kathleen. Oh, that guiding light. And he finds her back in West Virginia, goes to her for sound moral guidance. I'm sure I would love just to be a fly in the wall of what kind of life lesson she's giving Charles. Everyone's trying to get you, Charles. You just got to fucking take what's yours. I don't know. January 1955, 20-year-old Manson marries 17-year-old Rosalie Jean Willis in McMetchen, West Virginia. Because that's as you do in West Virginia in the 50s. You marry 17-year-olds. There's probably a bylaw that you had to with that or something. But almost immediately gets her pregnant. Again, as you do in the West Virginia. And, they have no decent adult looking out for them. Charles works odd jobs. And imagine this. Steals stuff. Starts stealing cars. Burglarizes to pay the bills. Well, already by 1956, the very following year, he's back in jail. A series of car thefts and parole violations have landed him 3 years in federal prison in San Pedro, California. Rosalie and Mom head out to L.A. and visit him in prison. And Rosalie gives birth to little Charlie Manson Jr., a son who, following his own mother's example, Charles would soon completely abandon. And the dude loved crime, man. From 1951 to 1967, he was arrested on everything from like mail theft, forgery, burglary, several times on running prostitutes. And again, so that's kind of an important note for what's going to happen later. The dude is, becoming a professional manipulator of women. 1957, Charles' mom informs him that Rosalie is living with another man. Charles tries to escape. He's going to find his woman by stealing a car right before he has a parole hearing because he's a criminal goddamn genius. He's given 5 years probation. Rosalie files for divorce. Well, that's good for Rosalie. 1958, Charles and Rosalie are officially divorced, and rather than be a dad again, Charles decides to pimp one 16-year-old girl and live off the money of the parents of another young girl, among other, academic, scholarly endeavors. And in 1959, he marries a young prostitute he's been pimping. Candy Stevens has another son, Charles Luther Manson. So we get our third Charles Manson. He also abandons this kid when he goes back to prison. What happened, if you're curious, to those other two Charles Mansons? Well, the first killed himself in 1993. Not shocked, just based on, being abandoned. I mean, how much did that suck for your self-esteem? When the fucking swastika dude, the fucking lunatic, like when he is like, nah, you're not good enough for me to raise you. Like, Jesus, one thing to be abandoned by your dad, but to be abandoned by Charles Manson, oh, that sucks. And the other one's whereabouts are totally unknown, which, good for the mom on that one, for like not giving into any media pressure to I mean, that's social suicide, if you let people know that your son's father is Charles Manson. 1960, Manson is apprehended for suspicion of violation of the Mann Act, which is when they would, transport women or underage girls across state lines for prostitution, other lewd acts. Eventually charged with some fraud bullshit, and goes back to prison for probation violation. 1961, he's transported from Southern California penal system to McNeil Island Prison up in Washington State in the Puget Sound. His mom, too little too late, but she moves up to Seattle to be close to him, I guess better than abandoning him again, as the new wife does. She'll divorce Charles in 1963 while he's still in prison. And 1961 is important. It's a pivotal year for Charles because that's when he learns to play guitar. And what a backstory this guy has. From another inmate, Alvin Creepy Karpis. And that's his real nickname. I didn't add the creepy. It was apparently given to this guy for his sinister smile. Creepy Karpis was a Canadian-born Lithuanian gangster who was one of 3 leaders of the Barker Karpis gang of the 1930s, one of only 4 men to ever be given the title of Public Enemy Number 1 by the FBI. The other 3 being people you've probably heard of, John Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd, and Babyface Nelson. So Creepy Karpis was in there too. All killed, all 3 of the other ones killed before being captured. Maybe that's why they became more infamous in death. Creepy Karpis, also, somewhat famous, I guess, for he spent more time in Alcatraz than any other prisoner, 26 years. Well, old Creepy Carpus, who did get released in 1969, had a couple of successful book tours in Canada about his earlier criminal exploits. Eventually died living in Spain. Old Creepy could play a mean guitar, and he taught Charlie how to play. Said Charlie picked it up quick, had a good voice. This musical talent would pave the way for the Manson family a little bit later. And by the way, you can listen to some Charles Manson songs on iTunes and Spotify. There's one album that comes up on each if you just search his name. YouTube videos as well. Not actually bad. Not actually bad. I'm gonna play us out with a little Charles Manson at the very end of this episode. Kind of the song he was most known for. Look at Your Game, Girl. I think that's the one I remember a little bit later that Guns N' Roses actually covered on that Spaghetti Incident or whatever the fuck that weird B-side album was of theirs. Anyway, 66, 67, Manson transferred back down to Terminal Island Prison in San Pedro for his eventual release on March 21st, 1967. By the time he got out, he'd spent more than half of his 32 years incarcerated. Allegedly was so used to living in prison, he actually requested to stay when initially granted his release. Oh, in hindsight, should have granted him that request. Should have fucking kept him in there. Shit's going to get real weird the next couple years. April 1967. Within a few weeks of his release from prison, Charles has headed to San Francisco. He's not wasting time, man. He started the formation of what would become the Manson family, meeting Berkeley librarian Mary Bruner, the sexy librarian, who clearly has a thing for bad boys. 23-year-old Manson, or the 23-year-old lets Manson move in with her, and I'm guessing have an insane amount of, of hippie meets dude who's been in prison for a long time, free love sex. Charles also may have gotten Mary Bruner pregnant because she had a son, Valentine Michael, what a hippie name, in April 1968. But with the whole kind of free love thing, no paternity test, Charles has never been confirmed as the dad, but, probably at least has 3 kids. May 1967, barely a month into his living with Mary, this dude, he does have some fucking game, picks up 18-year-old Lynette Squeaky Fromm, convinces Mary to let Lynette move in with them. What a fucking horny dude, man. He's fresh out of prison. And again, we're talking about game. The guy has no employment prospects. He's 5'2". He's scrawny. He already looks like a fucking homeless lunatic. And he's got 2 young hot chicks. And he's just getting started. And out hitchhiking that summer, he meets a preacher. Check this story. This is the craziest him picking up a girl. Talk about charisma this guy had in a cult leader, type way. He's out hitchhiking the summer of 67. He meets up a preacher, Dean Morehouse, who ends up inviting him home for dinner, and even gives him a piano because he appreciates the guy's musical talent. And apparently, spun some tale about if only he had these opportunities, he could be a musician. He does have musical aspirations, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Charles takes the piano. He ends up trading it for a Volkswagen microbus. That's a wizard level hippie move right there. Someone gives you a free piano, you fucking exchange it for a microbus. God damn. And as if conning this dude out of a piano isn't enough, check this shit out. He sweet talks the preacher's 16-year-old daughter into running off with him. Dean, the preacher, vows to kill Charles Manson. Charles then meets up with Dean, calms him down, gets him to drop LSD, stays with him and his wife in the house for a few weeks, long enough for the preacher's wife to get sick of his shit and leave. The dude doesn't kick Charles out at this point. I mean, what a charismatic motherfucker, man. I know it's messed up, but a little bit of applause. Okay. A little bit of insight into how this dude got people to kill for him. Dude could sell portraits to the blind, to blind people who hate art. Jesus Christ. Summer 67. More troubled young girls followed. 19-year-old Patricia Krenwinkel and 20-year-old Susan Atkins, who Manson meets in the Haight-Ashbury district while he's playing guitar. They're joining the family now. Fall of 67. Charles packs the ladies into a Volkswagen microbus, the piano bus, moves to L.A., 6 months out of the joint. 6 months! And he has a bus of hot young chicks who have dedicated their lives to him. He tries to make connections in the music world. He's offering his girls as bait to dudes. Like he's pimping these girls out, essentially. He thinks they could, help him get some music contacts. The family is growing. They wander around L.A. and Topanga, scrounging food from dumpsters when money gets tight. I mean, just full-on hippie cult mode. Charlie, he gets his first record company audition, a 3-hour session. Doesn't get signed, makes more connections. And March 1968, a couple of the Manson family girls meet Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, who picks them up hitchhiking on the Sunset Strip. Charlie and the girls move in with Dennis, and meet LA scenesters like producer, big record exec Terry Melcher. Summer 1968, Charlie does more studio sessions now through his Beach Boys connections, hoping for a record deal with the Beach Boys label. Brian Wilson apparently isn't impressed. Thank God. And the Manson family, could you imagine what this guy would have done if he would have been given some fame. Who knows how many more people he would have killed. I don't know. Or maybe he would have been happy. I don't know. Maybe it would have been better. But anyway, Brian Wilson's not impressed. And the Manson family, now a couple of dozen, they moved to Spawn Ranch because they've been actually living along with the Beach Boys. The Manson family was living with the Beach Boys for a while. But they moved to Spawn Ranch in summer 1968, a movie set owned by the elderly George Spahn, whose sex sessions with Squeaky Fromm is what gave her the nickname Squeaky. Gross. The more I researched this episode, the more I understand why America's been fascinated with this guy. I just keep having to reread things, look up other sources to make sure it happened. It all just seems so fucking over the top and outlandish. Like most guys have trouble enough wooing one hot girl at a time. This dude had a harem. He's rubbing elbows with record producers and famous musicians. He's living with the Beach Boys. He's recording music. You know, he was driving like Dennis's Rolls Royce around and stuff at this time, all without a high school degree and not even out of prison a year. And he's 5'2" and looks completely insane. September 1968. The Beach Boys record Manson's song Cease to Exist, which Dennis Wilson has revised and retitled Never Learn Not to Love for their next album, 2020. It comes out in December as a B-side to Bluebirds Over the Mountain, which peaks on the charts as number 61. Manson had to have been stoked to get this recorded, but apparently he wasn't very happy that Dennis revised the lyrics, revised the music, didn't give him proper writing credit, confronted Dennis. I guess he wanted to kill Dennis, and Dennis beat the shit out of him. How great is that? Again, talk about flying the wall. To watch one of the Beach Boys beat the shit out of Charles Manson. Okay, so much shit is going to happen in 1969 that we need to exit out of this Timesuck timeline, lay some groundwork, then take another march through that summer.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
1969, the year of Manson. All right, the flower power culture of San Francisco in the mid-late 60s, man. Let's get into it. Haight-Ashbury. Let's talk about the summer of love, the infamous summer of love. Okay, so before we go further, we need to go back to the culture of the Bay Area that Manson moved to when he was released from prison in spring of 67. 1967 is the summer of love. And that summer, roughly like 100,000 young beatniks and hippies, youth disillusioned with Vietnam, they're disillusioned with their parents' rigid ideals of God and country, and they all converge on this Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco to experiment with drugs, experiment with sex. They want to challenge the status quo, the previous generation. They want to redefine themselves. The timing was uncanny, with Manson's release. So he's released into the epicenter of this counterculture revolution where everyone is questioning everything. He's surrounded by tens of thousands of young people looking for something to believe in. People who are also taking a shitload of hallucinogenic drugs. These are people who are extremely curious about religion, spirituality, who are, very open to new ideas and very suspicious of traditional values. They're looking for something new. And Charles Manson was something fucking new. And his followers didn't see him as being institutionalized as a negative. They saw, his backstory as a positive. This dude was a victim of an unjust system. A system they wanted to change, and a system that he had refused to let break him. He's kind of a counterculture hero, And he was old enough to be a father figure to these young hippie girls who were estranged from their own fathers for going against their dad's values and their dad's wishes and joining this counterculture revolution. So it was the perfect storm for a fast-talking career criminal, a dude with his own mommy issues that drove him to want a new family also. The girls wanted a new dad, he wanted a new family, and it happened. And so let's get to know this family. This is the Manson family. Let's start with Mary Bruner. First Manson family member, the 23-year-old Berkeley librarian I mentioned earlier, and again, probably the dad of Valentine Michael, who was known by the family as Pooh Bear. Of course he was. That's what a hippie cult names a baby. Pooh Bear. Okay. Bruner never served time for involvement in the 1969 killings, but only because she testified against the other family members. But a weird thing where she testified against them, but somehow was considered remaining as far as being loyal to them, and I don't know. It's a whole mess. She was still brainwashed. But in 1971, she and the other family members did steal a bunch of weapons. They planned to hijack a plane and use it as leverage to get Manson and the other families out of prison. So she does serve some prison a little bit later. They even have like a shootout with the police. She spends 6 years. She's paroled in 1977. Squeaky Fromm. Lynette Squeaky Fromm said in an interview, the first thing Charles said to her was, "So your dad kicked you out of the house, huh?" That's what pulled her in. Someone who understood being abandoned and rejected, and he did understand that. So she was 18 when they met, one of the first members of the family. Always wondered where the name Squeaky came from. I explained earlier. So gross. It's from having sex with a 80-year-old half-blind George Spahn, who said that was like the noise they made when he would like pinch her thigh. She would squeak. Blech! Squeaky was fascinated by Manson, the way his mind worked. And she became really well known after Manson and some of the other family went to jail for the 1969 murders. She was never charged with that. She wasn't active in those killings, but she did try to assassinate President Gerald Ford in 1975 with a Colt .45 pistol. And this is just a little funny side note. During the trial, she also threw an apple at the prosecutor while he was recommending a lengthy prison sentence for her, knocked the glasses off his face. So, hey, Squeaky, nice shot. How fucking cool is that? She's also currently out of prison. She was paroled in 2009 at the age of 61. She's living in upstate New York. So Squeaky's up there with her biker boyfriend somewhere up in upstate New York. Patricia Krenwinkel, one of the most active members during the murder spree, Pat, as they would call her, amongst other things. She was the third girl to join Squeaky and Mary, known already as Charlie's Girls. That would have made for a very different Charlie's Angel movie. Some kind of mashup between Charlie's Angels and Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers. She was 19 when she joined the family. She was mesmerized by Charlie and, quote, made love to him on the first night, crying when he told me I was beautiful. God, he knew a mark when he saw one, didn't he? Remember, this dude is a former pimp, professional manipulator of women. Check out this quote about Patricia's early life with Charlie and the girls. She says, quote, we were just like wood nymphs and wood creatures. We would run through the woods with flowers in our hair, and Charles would have a small flute. Ha! That is, oh my God, that's like out of like a crazy hippie stereotype fantasy. Like they're out naked in the woods. He's playing a flute. She's telling them their dads don't understand them. They're all fucking, they literally got flowers in their hair, dropping acid. And yeah. Oh my God. And in less than 2 years after that, they would transition into carving people up with a knife and writing shit on the walls in their blood. My, how things change. So all three of these girls listed so far, Pat, Mary, Squeaky, they're also beautiful. That's something that makes it more surreal to me. Young, beautiful women, these peace-loving forest nymph hippies that suddenly would turn murderous. Patricia is still in prison for her role in the 1969 murders. Then you got Leslie Van Houten. Van Houten, 19 years old when she met Manson and joined the family in 1968. Along with Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, all three girls are in prison, or in the famous prison photo, which I'll put on the website, of the three Manson girls on trial in 1970 when they all carved X's in their foreheads to mimic the X Manson carved into his. Because originally it was like an X, like he was removing himself from society. Yeah, he turned it into a swastika a little later because he's a lunatic. As if he's not a lunatic for carving an X in his head. Leslie was deemed suitable for parole in the early 2016, but her parole was denied, and she's still in prison for the 69 murders. And this one, she's the homecoming princess killer. She went from being a homecoming princess to part of this delusional felon's harem to being arrested for multiple ultraviolet murders in just a couple years. Susan Atkins, formerly known as within the family as Sexy Sadie. Charlie would have her work as a stripper. Charlie met her at a house party where she was living with some other young hippies when she was 19, late 1967. Within weeks, she'd be living with Charlie, and within months, she'd believe he was Jesus. Yep, he was convincing. She was also the one who found the family their home, the Spawn Ranch, which I'll describe in a little more detail soon. Convicted of being part of 8 different family murders. She died in prison in 2009 from brain cancer. Yeah, and I should add, all the Manson family murder convictions, originally they were all going to be on death row. They were not going to be. They were on death row, but then there was this California changes death penalty in 1972. So that's why these people weren't executed, if you're curious. I did crack up in doing the research that the first photos that popped up of both Susan and Leslie both had huge cold sores on their lips. So Charlie, he fucked them over in so many ways. I mean, sent them to prison for the rest of their lives with herpes as a little like icing on the shit cake. Icing on the herp cake. Charles Tex Watson. This is Charlie's right-hand man. The family had some dudes, too. And, you know, Tex was one of the first. He was a former honor student and star football player, college frat boy, who threw a promising life away after flying from L.A. to visit a frat brother, check out the psychedelic lifestyle of Hollywood and Venice Beach in the 60s. This dude would become the main muscle for the 69 murders. He was described as Manson's right-hand man. as I said. Tex actually he met Manson through the Beach Boys when he picked up Dennis Wilson, the co-founder, drummer, backup vocalist, and songwriter, the dude who sung lead on the Beach Boys' 1965 hit "Do You Want to Dance," a song that peaked at number 12 on Billboard when he picked him up hitchhiking. He picked that dude up hitchhiking and took him back to Dennis's home where Charlie and some of the family were living for a few months in 1968. Think about how fucking weird that is. What a weird culture at that time in the late 60s, in California. Dennis Wilson is hitchhiking and living with the Manson family. This is a founding member of the Beach Boys. They had put out 3 albums in 1963 alone that charted in the Billboard Top 10, including Surfing USA. You might have heard of that. 2 went gold, 1 went platinum. 3 more gold albums come out in 1964, 2 more gold albums in 65. The classic Pet Sounds platinum album, 1966. They released their 14th studio album, 14th in 1968, called Friends, an album that received 4 out of 5 stars in Rolling Stone. And now in 1968, their popularity is declining a little bit as the hippie sounds of the late 60s become more in fad than their kind of pop-driven sounds. But these guys were fucking huge, rich, famous, very rich, very famous. And they're hitchhiking. And they're just hitchhiking around L.A. Strange times, man. That'd be like picking up Dan Auerbach of the Black Keys on Sunset Strip tomorrow and having him just, he's just like, hey, man, do you want to just live in my mansion for a couple months? Maybe we could do some sessions. Insane. Okay. So the other family members, talk about that real quick. So there's the core group. There's Mary Bruner, Squeaky Fromm, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, Disillusioned Young Girls, Susan Atkins. Then we got Tex Watson. I got pictures of all these on Timesuck podcast.com under the episode description. So all these have some all these people have some involvement in the 69 killings. And then there was others, like Paul Atkins, and I don't know. There was like Catherine Gypsy Cher, all this crazy stuff. There was this guy, Bobby Busol, a dude who has a website, Bobby Busole. There we go. And that is better maintained than most comics I know, where you can download free tracks. He scored the music to a 1979 film called Lucifer Rising. You can get the album on iTunes. How do people do shit like that? Like they're scoring movies from prison. But all these weirdos were living together in 1969 at the Spahn Ranch. The Spahn Ranch was an old movie set, 500 acres, just north of Malibu, where old Western films and episodes like Bonanza, Lone Ranger, Zorro, and stuff were filmed in the early 1900s. And the family they would help out the 80-year-old pervert / dairy farmer, George Spahn, keep up the ranch in exchange for letting them live there and, having access to the young women. And they turned it, and there was footage in this Charles Manson documentary from the Spahn Ranch. They're living on this beatnik paradise. They're playing music, they're partying, they're having orgies. They're also hiding stolen cars and shit like that paid for their lifestyle. I mean, Charles was a thief. And so that's the scene. Partying, music ambitions, parental and social disillusionment. Young girls looking for someone to love them. Young dudes looking for a good time, and young girls to make love too. A lot of drugs. And a charismatic pimp running the whole show. A master manipulator who got his followers away from society, got them to let go of all their old beliefs through LSD experimentation, through constant fantasy. He created blank canvases out of these young hippies, broke them down, and then started to paint his own vision upon them. His Helter Skelter philosophy, which I'm going to explain later, is the fucking best part of this episode. God damn, I didn't know how crazy it was. Initially at the ranch, it was all fun and games with, Manson, but then, it got darker as time went on because he's a dark soul, man. Remember his childhood. Remember all the incarceration. And so, the longer they were on the ranch, the darker he became, and the fun and games gave, way to questioning right and wrong, to questioning life and death. He was brainwashing these people. And he went from people who would follow him for adventure and a good time to people who would kill for him. So let's get into the murders. Time for another Timesuck timeline.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a Timesuck timeline.
March 1969. Manson's pissed that he hasn't become a huge rock and roll star. He wanted to be a huge, like the Beatles huge. He had met big-time record producer Terry Melcher, and Melcher even auditioned him for a possible recording contract, possible documentary about his music and the family, but basically came to think of Manson as violent and insane after watching him get in a fight at Spahn Ranch with the ranch hand, and after hearing about him fight, Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. He finds Manson to be what he is, mentally unstable. Good fucking call. They sever ties. But Manson thinks he knows where the dude lives. He's been to the guy's house, a place where he was living with Candice Bergen when they met, the actress who would go on to play Murphy Brown. So Manson goes to Melcher's house on Cielo Drive, unaware that Melcher has already moved out, and he shows up in the middle of a party given by one of the new residents, Sharon Tate. Very bad twist of fate for her. July 1969. Money from a music career is not coming in, and Manson's getting desperate for cash to keep his family interested in sticking around. Along with Tex Watson, he sets up a, quote, drug burn, making a deal to sell 25 kilos of pot that he doesn't have, hustling $2,500 out of a black drug dealer named Bernard Lots of Papa Crow. What a great nickname. Watson takes the money, runs, and when Crow demands his money back, Manson arranges a meeting at Crow's apartment and then shoots Lots of Papa in the chest. The violence has begun. Fortunately, Lots of Papa lives. You can't kill Lots of Papa with one shot, man. It's too much Papa. You gotta shoot Lots of Papa, I don't know, 15, 20 times, man. You gotta kill all the Papa. There's so much. I just pictured that guy. I haven't looked at the picture up, but I picture Lots of Papa as a dude who wore a lot of fur hats and said jive turkey a whole bunch. Okay, so, and that comes into, this gets, by the way, Manson really paranoid. After he shoots this guy and thinks he kills him, he thinks that this guy is a member of the Black Panther movement, and he becomes convinced that, that angry black men are going to kill him for that. This feeds his Helter Skelter vision later. July 25th, 1969, Bobby Beausoleil, the fucking guy with a website from prison right now, scoring films. A friend of Charlie's, current, again, prison musician, gets burned in another drug deal gone bad, this one involving Gary Hinman and a biker gang, the Straight Satans. What a fucking name that is. Why would you ever fuck with the Straight Satans? Burned for $1,000. That's just like a death wish. Oh, my God. Burned for $1,000. Beausoleil goes to Hinman's home with a handgun, a knife, and a few family accomplices. Tex, Bruner, Bruce Davis, Manson. I guess Manson cuts off Hinman's ear after Beausoleil shoots him dead. Atkins writes, political piggy on a wall in Hinman's blood. Shit's escalating, man. They're cutting up members of the Straight Satans. Sunday, August 9th, 1969, the Tate murders at Cielo Drive. Under the orders of Charles Manson, Tex Watson, along with Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and another Manson family member, Linda Caspian, who would later avoid prison time by being a key witness for the state prosecution, invaded the home of Sharon Tate and her husband, Roman Polanski, director/pedophile. Polanski was away in London filming, probably fucking diddling kids. Tate was home with some friends. Manson had told the four family members to destroy the house and everyone in it, as gruesomely as you can, as a message to producer Terry Melcher, who he believed owned the home. This guy is not taking rejection in the music business well at all. Tate was 8.5 months pregnant at the time, just returned home from a late dinner at El Coyote, a popular little restaurant spot in L.A. with 3 friends, her former lover and hairstylist Jay Sebring, the man who he was the guy who first actually introduced martial artist Bruce Lee to the acting world, and just everybody was connected in L.A. at the time. Wojciech Frykowski, an aspiring Polish screenwriter friend of Roman's with a fucking crazy Polish name. Frykowski's lover, Abigail Folger, heiress to the Folger coffee fortune. More than waking up. They had some kind of bullshit jingle. Folger. More. I'm getting Folger's little jingle confused in my brain with, for some reason, the G.I. Joe. More than meets the eye. I don't know. Anyway, she was a big deal. This is before Starbucks came. A lot of people were into Folgers. Very wealthy young lady. Around midnight, Tex climbs a telephone pole, cuts off phone access to the home. Then the 4 family members climb over a bushy embankment. Tex jumps over first, over the gate, under the grounds of the home. 18-year-old student Stephen Parent drives up to the gate to leave. He'd been visiting the caretaker, a friend of his, sees the Manson family, sees Tex. Tex shoots him 4 times in the chest for being in the wrong place at the wrong fucking time. Tex then sneaks into the house after midnight, cuts through an open window screen, quietly lets in 2 other family members, Susan and Patricia, through the front door. Linda stays outside, acts as a lookout. Frykowski had been asleep on the couch, wakes up, and is kicked in the head by Tex, who tells him, quote, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." Wow. To say that, you're going to kill somebody, you can break it down as kill, but then also, do you fucking need to say that to him? Jesus. I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business. You know that guy had a lot of drugs in his system. When he's saying that's some cocaine. That's the cocaine talking. I don't know. No reason I didn't come across them doing coke, but I feel like I don't feel like you say that sober. I feel like that is literally like 100% coke speaking right there. I'm the devil, and I came here to do the devil's business. Susan and Patricia, and they did. Susan and Patricia find the other 3 occupants, round them up into the living room. Jay Sebring tells Tex and the others to take it easy on Sharon, who's pregnant. And for sticking his neck out, Tex stabs him and shoots him in the face, and all hell breaks loose. Frykowski runs out the door to escape, but he's shot twice by Tex Watson in the back, pounced on, stabbed, check this out, a total of 51 times. 51 times by Susan Atkins. That's way too much stabbing. Folger ran out the back door, is run down by Patricia Krenwinkel, who stabs her 28 times. Very stab happy, the Manson family. During the stabbing, apparently the victim, Folger, did not cry out, have a good morning with Folger, or whatever the jingle was. Stop, I'm already dead. Which, thank God they didn't use that for the jingle. I know that's very fucked up for me to say. Folger, stop, I'm already dead. I feel kind of guilty saying that, actually. Back in the house, Sharon Tate pleads to be allowed to live, save her baby, but the killers have none of it. Man, this is the devil. They're doing the devil's business. Susan and Tex stab Tate 16 times, 5 of the wounds fatal in and of themselves, according to the coroner's report. Baby does not survive. Before leaving, the family writes "pig" on the walls in Tate's blood. Monday, August 10th, 1969, the LaBianca murders at Waverly Drive. Very next night, Manson joins the family on the hunt. For some reason, he didn't feel like Tex and the others had inspired enough terror the night before. All the devil talk and writing on blood, he was taking it easy on him. And when I explain the true reason for the killings in a little bit, you're gonna understand that Manson is stark raving mad at this point. He's insane. He's disillusioned by his music career, and he's full fucking maniac mode. And all his followers have lost any sense of reality whatsoever. So they drive around the Los Feliz, Silver Lake area of L.A., essentially looking for some pigs who deserve it in their mind, and end up, and that's not a slang for police, that's just in their mind, like people who are part of the problem, pigs. And they end up in a neighborhood where they had been to a party the year before. They arrive at the house of a successful grocery company owner, Leno LaBianca, and his wife, Rosemary. And that night really fucking sucked to be them. Testimony varied from the family members regarding what actually took place that night, but we do know this couple was initially tied up. They were robbed. Watson then left the home after instructing, Manson then left the home after instructing the others to kill the couple. And then it looks like Tex Watson started stabbing Leno. Rosemary tries to escape in the melee. Leslie Van Houten starts stabbing Rosemary, is helped by Patricia Krenwinkel, whose arm apparently wasn't too tired from all of the stabbing she did the night before. This lady must have been struggling viciously because the two women stabbing her wasn't enough to kind of keep her under control. So Tex, him and his strong stabbing hand, they help out. Rosemary ends up getting stabbed a total of 41 times. They loved overkill, literally. After she'd been thoroughly stabbed, Tex returns to stab Leno some more. They fucking couldn't get enough of the goddamn stabbing. Total of 26 times. Must have been, less because of fatigue. Maybe I guess he was tired at that point from all the Rosemary stabs. He does work up the energy to carve the word war into the dude's stomach. Apparently he's an artist of sorts now, and murder is his medium. These guys are fucked up. The gang gets a little more creative with the blood writings this time. They write "death to pigs," "rise," a misspelled "Helter Skelter" on the fridge. No one's accusing them of being geniuses. And then they take back off to Spawn Ranch. And with that, we conclude the second of 2 Timesuck timelines.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
Okay, so when it was all said and done, Manson, Watson, Atkins, Krenwinkel found guilty for 7 counts of murder and 1 count of conspiracy. Leslie Van Houten charged with 2 counts of murder, 1 count of conspiracy for her role in the LaBianca killings. Casabian, in exchange for immunity, testifies for the prosecution to explain the events that occurred during each vicious crime. Now, before I get into why they did this, I would like to mention that there was a few other random murders associated with the family, but nothing is calculated and as gruesome as what we've covered. Okay, so why did they do it? Holy shit. This is what I really didn't know about Manson. This is fucking so insane. They did it because of Manson's Helter Skelter vision. Manson, through his own interpretations of some revelations, stuff from the Bible, and what he thought were messages coming from the Beatles, from their Helter Skelter song especially, he thought a race war was about to break out between whites and blacks. Yes, you heard that right. And he started talking about that on New Year's Eve, 1968, to his family. That's when he started getting real frustrated. Shit started getting real dark and even weirder than it already was. And by 1969, by the summer, he had really kind of formulated his idea of Helter Skelter into this really unique and insane vision. He thought it was his destiny to create an album of music with his family with hidden messages in the music that would inspire people to start a race war and also to come kind of hide with him, which I'm going to explain. He thought young white hippies would hear these messages, join the family, mostly young white hot female hippies. And then the young militant black men denied enough young white hippie hot women who they'd just begun to get a taste of, with the recent changes as far as blacks dating white people more, they would be so fucking pissed off that he was hiding some of these white women from him that they would start killing whites. They would get into a murderous, horny rage. And it gets even better. The blacks would then proceed to kill all of the whites, all of them in the world, with the exception of Manson and his new expanded family. Why weren't they killed? Oh, this is the best part. Because they were going to retreat into a secret city hidden beneath Death Valley, California, that awaited them. Manson had figured out the location through, again, his interpretation of Revelations. And they would just stay down there. They would stay down there, let the black people kill all the remaining white people, all part of the establishment anyway, all fucking pigs. And then Manson, he thought that once the above-ground whites were all killed by the blacks, that the black people would be unable to properly manage their new world. They wouldn't be able to be like, they didn't have the resources to figure out how to kind of run things. And then, hocus pocus, the Manson family comes up from their underground fucking Death Valley city, and the blacks would allow them to be like, thank God you guys are here because we don't know how to run shit. Please let us run it, or you guys can run it. And then Manson says regarding this, and I apologize for the language, but this is a direct quote. Then we would go scratch his fuzzy head and kick him in the butt and tell him to go pick the cotton and be a good nigger. Oh my God! What the fuck? How much acid do you have to take to make any of this sound like a remotely good idea? Think about that. They're on the ranch. And these hippies, and Manson's like, yeah. And then, we'll fucking hide and we wait. And the music gets out. And then the war starts. And then he gets, he's just so deluded and racist and crazy. And they went along with this. Oh, wow. And there's pages of Manson's interpretations of Beatles lyrics and his interpretations of Revelations, by the way. Way too much to get into this already lengthy episode. And again, I apologize for even saying that word. I just feel like I hate it when it's like I'm reading a quote and then I hide the word. It's like you're going to add the word in your head. Okay. And so that's why none of the people convicted of the Tate and LaBianca murders have ever gotten out on parole. I used to wonder, why are they still in prison? Because it was so brutal and so insane. It's like when you kill people thinking that you're going to start a race war that you will hide from in an underground city, you don't get to ever come out of prison again. You don't get to ever come out. You are always a risk to society at that point, forever and always. Oh, man. I wonder how many casual, kind of hippie, followers left the Spawn Ranch in 69. I bet they came there for the orgies and stuff, There had to have been a lot of, and then when shit started getting into the Helter Skelter vision, they had to jet, just conversations like, hey, man, it was a fun orgy last night. Yeah, what was up with that Helter Skelter shit? I don't know. Yeah, he kind of lost me. We started talking about the underground city, Why would they agree to be slaves again after proving they could kill way more white people than the amount of us that would come out of hiding? I don't know. Let's just get out of here. Hey, Charlie, hey, great party, bud. Love the Helter Skelter shit, dude. You fucking get it. I always thought that Beatles song was a little more than meets the eye. Sure, I'd love some more acid. Weird times, man. Weird times. I had no idea how weird it was. Oh, let's get into some top 5 takeaways.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Number 1, Manson's pimp game was and is stronger than yours. Since the time he got out of jail at 21, he's either been incarcerated or having sex with a variety of young women. There are young women who still want Charles Manson inside of them today. Attractive women. One is Elaine Burton. I'll have a picture of her on the website too. A woman who started communicating with him when she came across some of his writings about the environment when she was 17. She immediately saved up money, moved to California so she could visit him in prison, and tried marrying him at the age of 24. This is recently. And she's actually kind of hot. How much does that suck for the 25-year-old dude who can't get any women to date him, let alone be in a relationship with him? With Charles Manson, as crazy as he looks now, and with everything he's done, somehow still getting girls, even though he's incarcerated. Okay, well, ugh. Number 2, the Beach Boys recorded a Manson song. Also, years later on the album The Spaghetti Incident, that's what I was talking about earlier, Guns N' Roses recorded another Manson song. Yep, Look at Your Game, Girl. Not easy to walk the murderous cult leader / folk singer, songwriter tightrope, but Manson briefly pulled it off. And again, you should check out some of his tunes just out of curiosity on either YouTube or Spotify. It's worth a listen, and they're like not as bad as I thought they were going to be. You'll hear one at the end. Number 3. The best way not to raise another Charles Manson is to not bring a kid into the world with no father and be a prostitute mother who abandons her child after returning from prison until he's an adult and the damage is done. So parents, all parents, make sure your kids know about birth control before they become sexually active. Number 4, don't pick up hitchhikers. Don't pick him up, ever. A lot of this shit would have never happened if Dennis Wilson hadn't picked up a couple Manson family hitchhikers in 1968, and if Tex Watson hadn't picked up a hitchhiking Dennis Wilson so weird a little after that. Number 5, Manson believed that he could write and record an album that would ignite a race war that he would then hide from in an underground city, only to emerge with thousands of beautiful white hippie women and then rule over black people who had just got done killing all the other white people and got other people to believe this shit too. In a weird way, nothing makes me want to get in a time machine and visit the late 60s California more than that fact. Holy shit. The times were wild and the drugs must have been incredible.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
All right, so there you go. There you go. That's Manson, man. When I watch interviews of this dude, I don't like him. I don't respect him, at all. Of course, he was a monster. But I also, it's weird. I don't despise him like I despise Ted Bundy, for example. He doesn't seem evil in the same way Bundy did. Maybe that's, just the power of his charisma in a weird way. Bundy seemed like, evil incarnate, just cold and calculated. Manson seems just like broken and confused. You almost pity him somehow. Like Bundy, his dad was never in the picture, but unlike Bundy, he had much less childhood stability. Mom went to prison for a 5-year stretch, worked as a prostitute off and on, pawned him off on relatives, put him in all boys, lived in school, rejected his pleas to live with their foster care, all that stuff. He's getting raped and beat, some of the places he's at. Had a hard childhood by any standard. He said something in a Diane Sawyer interview that actually really stuck to me. He said, the only thing my mother taught me was that everything she said was a lie, and I learned never to believe anyone about anything. Man, there's the seed. Clearly a deep mistrust of authority and a hatred women were woven into the identity-forming period of his childhood. By the time he was an adult, this little guy, 5'2", clearly no more than about 110, 120 pounds, had to survive in prison. Had to learn how to manipulate bigger, stronger inmates in order to survive. Had to think fast. And then you throw that shit out into the epicenter of the counterculture revolution in 1967, the summer of love. Something weird was bound to happen, and it surely did. Manson, he was something America hadn't seen before. He wasn't going to kidnap and kill your daughter. It was almost worse. He was going to kill America's young daughters in a different way. He was going to convince them to kill on his behalf. Somehow that's scarier, man. And Helter Skelter, man. Helter Skelter. What the fuck? Well, some kind of Helter Skelter is coming for you, Charlie. You are not much long for this world. You're sick in prison after reading all this, man. I hope for a variety of reasons that you just get it over with and die. And with that, thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you for the wonderful emails and iTunes reviews. I read every one. It helps a lot. The more people that listen to this, the more time I can justify spending on it, and I love doing this. I love it. I want to just keep getting better and better and just build this and see where the fuck it takes all of us, this crazy path of curiosity we're on. Thanks for continuing to spread the word. And the last review I saw actually mentioned flat earth theory, and I've gotten numerous emails about flat earth theory before, so that is next week's topic. So if you have any respect for science, you will really get a kick out of me making fun of these kooks, I hope. Hilariously uninformed and childless in their explanation of how the world is indeed totally flat. Just a frisbee hanging out in space. And again, photos of the major players from this episode are posted under the episode description at timesuckpodcast.com. And it's only fitting that Charles Manson himself take us out of this episode with little late 60s, maybe a little Dennis Wilson influenced. Look at your game, girl.
There's a time for living. The time keeps on flying. Think you're loving, baby, and all you do is crying. Can you feel? Those feelings real. Look at your game, girl. Look at your game, girl. What a mad delusion. Living in that confusion, frustration and doubt. Can you ever live without?
listening, everybody. Talk to you next week on another Timesuck.